It's been quite some time since the Detroit Pistons have been a competitive basketball team. The last time we seen the postseason was back when we had Blake Griffin, 2019, when he went out there and played on one leg and we were swept by the Milwaukee Bucks. Since then, we have been in the rebuilding process, and the first 3 years of that process have been brutal. We have not been a competitive ball club at all, and when it comes to winning games, we have been a poverty franchise. But I'm here today to tell you guys that next season things will be completely different, and I'm not just pulling this from behind my ears. There are a multitude of reasons to why I feel this way. Now, there's a few different things to talk about when it comes to the Detroit Pistons struggling during their rebuild and then turning things around. And one thing I've noticed during this rebuild, and we can start since Cade Cunningham was drafted with the #1 overall pick in 2021. But one thing I've noticed with our team is that we haven't really been consistently healthy. Cade Cunningham, we all know what kind of season his rookie campaign got off to with the ankle injury. He missed like the first 2 weeks of basketball. He missed training camp. So just a lot of rust for him to shake off as a rookie, and then also learning to the speed and the physicality of the NBA game. And even though all things considered, Cade Cunningham still had a great rookie season. He was my rookie of the year in the second half of the season. He clearly looked like the best player in his draft class. And something that's interesting about Cade Cunningham is that during his rookie season, he was one of the most double-teamed players in the NBA, and he still found a way to put up 20 points per game, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds in the second half of the season. But getting back to the injuries, back then we also had Jeremy Grant on the roster, and this was prior to the All-Star break or before the All-Star break. Jeremy Grant, he was out. I believe back then he was dealing with a hand injury, and it took him out for a bunch of games. And then after the NBA trade deadline, he got healthy. We also seen Marvin Bagley get traded to the Detroit Pistons. I feel like at that point, watching them in the second half of the season, they looked like a completely different ball club than in the first half of the season. Second half of the season, they were very competitive, had one of the best defenses in the NBA, and they also went to TD Garden and beat the Boston Celtics. I thought that was very impressive. And then we look at the most previous season, dealing with the injury bug once again. Cade Cunningham shut down very early for the season with his shin problem, and it put him out for the year. Jalen Duren dealing with injuries all season long. Isaiah Stewart, and the list goes on and on and on. So I feel like the Detroit Pistons, when you're rebuilding and you have a bunch of young pieces, it just makes it very hard for your team to find an identity because everyone is in and out of the lineup. So assuming that we go into this year next season healthy, I think that alone is going to make the Detroit Pistons be a completely different ball club. So, going into next season with the Detroit Pistons, if Cade Cunningham is healthy, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Livers, if all of these guys are healthy, I expect the Detroit Pistons to win more than 17 ball games. And another thing that has been a struggle during this rebuild, especially last season, has been defense. And to be specific, we have a hard time stopping the opposing team's best player. If it's a high level wing player, someone like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, guys that play the 2 and the 3, and that's because we really didn't have a guy who was known for being a perimeter lockdown defender. Although I feel like we have guys who can defend on the perimeter. Jaden Ivey, very athletic. He has a great wingspan. He can stay in front of people, but it's not his identity as a basketball player. It's not what he's known for, and it's not what he was drafted for. Same thing with Cade Cunningham. I think he's going to give effort on the defensive side of the ball, but it's nowhere near the best part of his game. So that's where I turn to what we did in this year's draft. I think we went out there and we got some talent on the defensive side of the ball, and we got guys who had and a defensive identity coming into the NBA draft. The first guy we drafted with the 5th overall pick, one of the Thompson twins, Asord Thompson. Now, what makes Asura Thompson such a great defender is that he has the physical gifts for it. We look at his size. He stands at 6'7", 205 pounds, and he has a 7-foot wingspan. So that's some tremendous size and length for the defensive side of the ball. And to make things better, he's supremely athletic. He's fast. He has lateral quickness, and like we just talked about in the overtime elite league, watching him, he had a defensive identity and a great defensive presence. And just one stat that pops up, he averaged 2 steals per game, so he's very active in the passing lane, and he's a ball hawk, and he's just a very multi-dimensional defender. He's a great on-ball defender, and he can also stay effective and engaged when he's guarding guys off of the basketball. He's great at rotating. He can use that athleticism and that wingspan to be a rim protector at the rim when guys are penetrating. So whenever guys get beat off the dribble, he'd be a great player to have on the back line to help around the rim. He can rebound the basketball, and the same thing with the off-ball defense, just being in the passing lane. So Asura Thompson coming into the league right now, he probably can effectively guard 1 through 3, and as he develops into his NBA body and put on more muscle, he could potentially be a player that guards 1 through 5 because he has that tremendous wingspan and he has supreme jumping ability. So I love what the Detroit Pistons did drafting him for the defensive side of the ball alone. And we also took another guy in the first round that has a defensive identity, Marcus Sasser from the University of Houston. He was selected with the 25th overall pick, and I love this pickup a lot because I feel like he brings a lot to both sides of the basketball. But right now, we're focusing on his defense. Now, he's on the shorter side when it comes to NBA height. He stands at 6'2", but he has great length with the 6'7" wingspan, so he's still going to be able to be disruptive on the defensive side of the basketball, playing the passing lanes, picking pockets, and also contesting perimeter shots. And another thing about Marcus Sasser is that he's a great point of attack defender. He doesn't mind getting up in a guy's personal space, picking him up full court. He does a great job of fighting over screens, and I think he's going to be a great defensive weapon for the Detroit Pistons. I love this selection a lot. So we've already discussed a few different things that can make the Detroit Pistons significantly better going into next season. Number one, the most important thing is health. Our best players have to remain healthy, and they have to suit up in at least 80% of the ball games, and also getting better on the defensive side of the ball. And I think in the draft, they brought in some great perimeter defensive pieces, and I think they brought in a guy in Asura Thompson who can guard the opposing team's best perimeter player. And another thing going into next season that I think will be better for the Detroit Pistons is three-point shooting. Now, one player I want to look at in depth is Cade Cunningham. Now, you look at his three-point shooting percentage. I don't know off the top of my head what it is, but I know it's not that great. But I feel like one of the bigger reasons that his three-point shooting is not that great is because he doesn't get many wide open looks, and he doesn't get a lot of good looks. A lot of the time, the three-point shots that he has to take or put up, they're difficult shots, and it's just because of the talent that we had or have around him. There's not too many guys around him that were a threat. So I think going into this season, it's going to be a little bit different because I'm seeing guys like Jaden Ivey, who attracts a lot of attention. Bogdanovich, he attracts a lot of attention. Jalen Duren, he's going to do a great job setting screens, rolling to the rim. So I think Cade Cunningham, with the better talent that he has around him, more shooters, also Isaiah Livers and Alec Burks. I don't even think Cade Cunningham got a chance to play alongside Alec Burks last year because he was another player that was dealing with injury. So I think with more talent and more perimeter threats being around Cade Cunningham, he's going to get a lot of easier looks, and I think his three-point percentage / efficiency is going to rise. And we just look at some of the other players on this team. Isaiah Livers, he can definitely knock down a wide open three-point shot. Jaden Ivey, I feel like for his rookie year, he did a damn good job of shooting the three ball last season. Marcus Sasser, who we just drafted, we talked about what he brings defensively, but I think think he might even be a better three-point shooter than he is defensively. He can shoot it off the catch. He can shoot it off the dribble. He can pull up from deep. He had a bunch of games in college last year where he made 4+ three-pointers. So he does a damn great job of shooting the three ball. Who else can knock down a three-point shot? We talked about Bogdanovich, one of the best three-point shooters in all of the NBA. So I think with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, those two guys are healthy, putting pressure on the defense by penetrating. I think guys are going to get a bunch of wide open looks, and I think this will be a better three-point shooting team next season. So that's what I'm banking on for the Detroit Pistons to be competitive next year. I want them to remain healthy. We need to create a defensive identity. We look at the successful teams in Pistons history. The going to work Pistons with Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, Rasheed Ben Wallace. They had a defensive identity, and also the Bad Boys Pistons, they also had a defensive identity. So I think if we can start there and ramp up the pressure on the defensive side of the ball, it will lead to success. And also the three-point shooting, I think it's all predicated on Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. When those guys are being aggressive, putting pressure on the defense, it'll naturally open it up for guys like Isaiah Livers, Alec Burks, Bogdanovich, Marcus Sasser. Asor Thompson can knock down an open three-point shot. So I'm really excited to see this team next year. And we also got a great coach in Monty Williams, who we made the highest paid coach in the NBA today. He has great leadership on and off the court, and he has great experience with young teams. When he got to the Phoenix Suns, outside of Chris Paul, it was a fairly young basketball club. He got them to the playoffs, and he even got them to the NBA Finals. But that's going to be it for today's video. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and if you really enjoyed, subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.